We're back for Your Ears Only. I'm David Alpern.
I'm Eddie Robinson with this quote from the news. I wish you would look the markets in the eye and say that the Fed has done too much. That was Texas Republican Congressman Kevin Brady to Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke after the chairman announced no new plans to stimulate the economy despite disappointing job growth numbers. Now this.
This president seems to think the best way to create jobs is to raise taxes. Because everywhere you turn, he's trying to raise taxes one way or the other. Taxes kill jobs. Taxes don't make jobs come back to America.
The challenge we've faced for over a decade is that harder work hasn't led to higher incomes. It's that bigger profits haven't led to better jobs. And Governor Romney doesn't seem to get that.
Two views of the American economic system characterized the 2012 presidential campaign, with Mitt Romney reflecting current pro-business interests and Barack Obama stressing a more populist concern for workers and consumers. But does American capitalism have to be such a battleground? University of Chicago economist Luigi Zingales has some ideas for reform to make the system work better for all and return to its standards of access, equilibrium, competition, and accountability that made the country great.
Zingales' new book is entitled A Capitalism for the People, Recapturing the Lost Genius of American Prosperity, from Basic Books, based both on deep research and his own experience as an immigrant from Italy, increasingly a model of economic dysfunction. And to talk about his insights and proposals, for Your Ears Only, we're pleased to have Luigi Zingales on the line now. Welcome to our program.
My pleasure.
Everyone agrees that the concentration of banks and other financial institutions have given them inordinate advantages, the political power that great wealth buys, and the vast interconnections that make them seem too big to fail, requiring government bailouts when their risky financial bets flop. How do you break them up?
So I think that there are two views of the war that are both at the opposite end of the spectrum, and I think both wrong. One is that markets fail all the time and they need to be fixed and in every possible respect. And another one is that markets always work perfectly and they never need any intervention. I think that I am in the middle ground. I think that most of the time markets work properly, but when they don't work properly, you need to have some regulation which is minimally invasive and more as market-friendly as possible. And so this is exactly what sort of my proposal for the banks is. The problem that we have is that there is the perception, and I think also reality, that some institutions are too big to fail. As a result, their cost of credit is lower because people are willing to lend them money because they know that the government stands behind them, at least implicitly. So that makes their cost of credit too low and favors them in the competition and tends them to leverage up more and more to take advantage of this. So what you need to do is devise a system that forces them to perceive a higher cost of credit. How do you do it? The system is based on having kind of a market-based signal that forces banks to recapitalize every time their layer of capital is too low. So is a capital requirement, but not based on a regulator's perception, but on a assessment of the marketplace.
I was struck by the meteorite metaphor in your critique of recent bailout psychology.
Yeah, I think that what we need to understand, and this is what I think the crisis has been very important in make me and other people think about, is our system that is composed mostly of people well-intentioned, sometimes go tremendously wrong. And the meteorite example is why sort of a president or a Federal Reserve chairman always go for a bailout regardless of his political views. I think that the answer is similar to, suppose there is a meteorite that is approaching the Earth, and you have to spend a huge amount of money to try to avoid this crash. Is it worth it or not? And regardless of the objective numbers, I think there is a huge pressure around the president to do something. One is because he doesn't want to go down in history as the one who did not save America. And if he spends a lot of money and avoid a problem, nobody will find out whether that was worth it or not because the problem has been avoided. And second, because there is an entire industry, in the case of the meteorite, the aerospace industry, that is going to lobby very heavily, making this problem appear much more severe than it is. And I think that's a good metaphor for what happened during the financial crisis and what will happen at every financial crisis.
How do you see the current presidential campaign debate over more stimulus spending versus less regulation and lower taxes on job creators?
Unfortunately, I think that the public debate is obsessed with the next month. I think that there is this big criticism of business being short-termist, but the public sector is much more short-termist than business. I think that what I write is what are the problems of America for the next decade or for the next decades, not for the next 3 months. And I think that it would be nicer if at least some of this debate were to enter in the sort of campaign for the presidential election, because we are choosing a president to shape the future, not to shape just the next 3 months.
How do you see the Eurozone situation playing out, the problems of Greece, Italy, and now this weekend, Spain?
I'm actually very pessimistic about Europe. I think that the way the smallest of the crisis, which is Greece, has been handled has been terrible. They should have restructured the debt in 2010 when there were a lot of private creditors to absorb part of the losses. What they did, and this is part of the meteorite metaphor, they started saying that the world would have collapsed if the creditors were to take a loss. And as a result, they substitute public lending to help out the private sector. As a result, now Greece is in a corner, and I fear the election in June 17th, because I think that the political parties are trying to get out of the agreement, and I don't think that Europe, and in particular Germany, will let them out of the agreement. So there is a serious risk that Greece will exit the euro, and this might have, again, psychological contagion on the rest of the continent.
Luigi Zingales is a professor of economics at the University of Chicago. His new book is A Capitalism for the People, Recapturing the Lost Genius of American Prosperity, from Basic Books.
Quote from the news, A Glance into the Future. That was University of Connecticut Professor Peter Benn on reports of a new non-invasive test of parents that reveals the complete DNA map of their fetus, with the potential for more abortions based not only on possible disorders, but the likely lack of wanted attributes, such as blonde hair or athletic prowess.
Next, is vanadium the next green gold? For your ears only.